Hello, welcome to part 24 of this YouTube series, Airbnb clone using Ruby on Rails. And in last video, we made some minor changes to our wishlist. And at this point, this is what we have. If I refresh, okay, I'll have to start my server first. Bin/dev, refresh. And at this point, we have one property already bookmarked or added to wishlist, and we were able to show it in our front end from our last video. Okay, but we still need to connect it to our backend. For example, if I click on this and I refresh, this will get removed and this will be still be visible. So I have to, and if I click on this, it should get removed, but technically it is not getting removed because we haven't connected it with our APIs. So first thing, the color is changing, but the data is not getting saved. So there are two things associated with it. We have a wishlist controller from our JavaScript. Sorry. So color is getting changed because of this. Okay. But we still have to, we haven't written any code here which indicates that we are saving it to our database. And how can we save it to our database? We can do that using our wishlist controller, but from a Ruby code. Okay. And in that, if we call this create function, then we can save it to our wishlist item. How can we call this? For that, we can go to Rails routes dash C. I think two videos back we did use this in Postman, but I'm just showing you now again. Wish list. We can use this create from our wish lists controller by making an API post API call on API slash wish lists. Sorry. Uh, yeah. So let's start working on this. So let's break this code a bit. Okay. How can we break this? We'll first have to make an API call, right? So for that, add add property to wishlist. Okay, in this we will implement our logic. And for now, we will just focus on the adding part. And once that is done, then we will focus on the removing part. Okay. So how can we add it? We can make an API call to this query, right? And for that, we will use fetch. Okay, you can use Axios or any other JavaScript based libraries, but I'm keeping it simple and use fetch API call JS. Yeah, let's open this. Pre-code camp should have a straightforward. Is there anything post? Uh, yeah, this one. Options, others no. And then the API call this. We can use options, and what is options? This. Okay, so let's make an API call. Let's try to copy this. Okay. Uh, for now, I'll just keep it like this. Fetch and keep it like this. Okay, it kind of looks messy, but still it's fine. So update is getting used here. Okay, so for us, it will be params property ID, sorry, underscore ID and user underscore ID. Because that's what we are using in our wishlist param. Create is dependent on wishlist params, and this in turn is dependent on user ID and property ID. So we will have to pass user ID and property ID, and these will be integers. Uh, let's do this like this: property ID, sorry, and user ID. We'll use this property ID for this and user ID for this. So that part is done. We have our params ready. Now let's focus on the const. Sorry, for on the options part. So we are making a post API call. That's correct. Our header content type application JS. I think in our API call we used accept, but I'll keep it like this for now. And if it fails, we'll see how if we have to update anything. And we have to use this params here. So that is done. Now let's focus on the fetch part. Instead of this API, this URL, we have to use this slash API slash wishlists. Copy slash API slash wishlists. We have these options set up, okay, where our parameters have already been defined, and then we'll get the data. Okay, so let's fix this indentation too. Data dot okay, data status data. If it is okay, let me write it down as response because that's what generally I use. Response dot okay, response status response. Okay, now we can use data. And let's get rid of this comments. We don't need that. The indentation is really bad in this. Okay, we can catch the error here. We can log the data, and after that we'll see if we have to do anything. We can, for now, we can just log the data. So that's one major part that we can do. Yes. Now, in this, what else we can do? We have to call this API with property ID and user ID. Where do we have to call it? We won't update the icon right now. And here we have to call this. And we can fix this also. When will we update this icon? When the API call is successful. So where is it successful? In data. Here it is successful. So in this, we will update the icon. Okay. I hope it makes sense to you if we are doing this for the first time. And now we have to pass our property ID and user ID. Where can we pass it from? We can pass it from our index file. Not this index, HTML ERB index. Okay. Earlier we used user logged in status and we used it here as user logged in and got the status of logged in, right? So similar to that, we'll pass the property ID and user ID. So for that, we can use data property ID property dot ID. Okay, and same goes for our user, and we can use current user dot ID. But assume if our user is logged out, okay, in that case also property will be visible, but current user value will be null, and that's why it will give an error. So to fix that, we can use ampersand. Okay, we'll check this again, but yeah, this will work. Now let's catch those IDs. So if status is false, we want property ID and user ID. So const user ID is equals to this dot element dot dataset dot user ID, and same goes for property ID too. Okay, and we can pass our property ID is first attribute, first param. So this followed by user ID. And there is one more mistake. We have to use this, otherwise it won't work. I hope this works. Let's console this also. Console.log to make sure that we are passing correct data. Okay. So this is how it is working. It will check for the status, that data set that the user has not favorited or not wishlisted or not bookmarked this particular item. Then we'll make an API call. In that, we'll pass the property ID and user ID. It will be a post API call on this particular URL. Once that API call is successful, then we'll update the icon. Okay. And if it is fail, we'll just log it, but we don't want to worry about uh, doing anything in that case. And if it is failure here also, in that case also, we can just log this. Don't throw error here. Yeah, it's not that important to us. Yeah. So let's try to make this API call. So I should not have stopped the server, but anyways, refresh. Why was it visible? Okay, refresh. Let's try this and refresh, and it is working. So the API call was successful. Let's inspect console, refresh. Now we will add wishlist this property. So let's click on this, and we should see console also. And after we refresh this again, this should remain added. And at the same time, we can check this in our terminal also. Sorry, Rails console also. Rails C wishlist.all. And we have ID 5 and 7 for now. So the next ID should be 8 or something else. Let's refresh. Add this to wishlist. It was successful, and the ID is 8. Now we can see 578. Okay. So that's one. Uh, Now we will have to change the status also. Let's revisit these data attributes. So controller will remain same. User logged in status will remain same. It is not dependent on our wishlist controller. If something is if any of these attribute is getting updated in wishlist controller, we have to make sure that we update that again in index. For example, after API call, will the property ID change? No. After API call, will the user ID change? No. After API call, will this change? No. But after API call, the status will change. I'm just thinking whether let's try this. Okay. I'll right click, inspect. This time I won't refresh or anything. And for this particular item, the data status is false. If you see this here, the data status is false. The data status is true. So it is working synchronously correctly. So we don't need to have to worry about it. So that's great. Now we have to destroy it, right? Let's focus on that. I hope this makes sense. And if you think that you have understood this in a great way, you can implement the delete on your own and then continue on watching the video. Okay. So let's minimize this. Delete. No, not delete. Because we are not deleting the property, it might look bad. Remove property from wish list. Okay. Uh, we'll make a API call, but what like the earlier API call dependent on property ID and user ID. So let's see what the destroy depends on. Destroy depends on ID. So it should be a wishlist ID. So let's add wishlist ID here. Now I'll make a API call. So does this have a delete? No. I know we just have to use a correct URL with our, we won't use body in that, and we'll use delete here, but I still want to do this a bit quickly. So let's try this fetch delete API call. Let's find delete. This should work. Why okay, let me check if there is anything. Yeah, let's directly copy this. As I mentioned, wait. It doesn't have options, but yeah, let's do this anyways. Okay, we won't like write this in short. We'll make it full response. Sorry, this. Let's do this. Let's copy this. Okay, similar to our previous case, and we'll use these two also. But what will we do here? We'll unhighlight the wishlist icon. So let's get rid of this from here and paste it here. Okay, I want console. Okay, we can log console log here, and this is done. Delete is getting called. We have to fix the URL also and ID. Instead of ID, we can write wishlist ID. And for URL, we can go to our, let's exit this, clear, and Rails routes C wishlist. And in that, we can use this API wishlist ID. Fetch, delete, response. And now we just have to call this correctly in this dot. But we need wishlist ID. How can we do that? Again, pass it like this. Wishlist ID. We have passed it, but we have to set this wishlist ID in our ERB file also, right? HTML ERB. So for that, data wishlist ID equals to, we can use our user instance or property instance. For now, I'll just focus on property dot. Let me check this in Rails console first. Rails C property equals to property dot first. Now property dot, we have one. Let me check my model. Views model. We have wishlists and wishlisted users. So wishlisted users will just give user ID users. So I think wishlist might have our details. And it does have details. We need to check whether our current user is part of this or not. Okay. And this is an array. So wishlist dot find by user, and we want user to be user dot first. Let's see. Yeah, we are able to find these details. So basically, property contains wishlist, which in turn contains all the users who have wishlisted this. So out of all those users, I just want to find my user, whether it is part of it or not. And if it is a part of it, then we can write this dot ID, something like this dot ID, and we'll get 5. Sorry, not ID, user ID, which is 1. Okay. So let's try this out. Copy. We need ID only. Sorry, that was my mistake. Property dot wishlist. Property dot wishlist dot, sorry, dot find user, and instead of first user, we will use our current user and ID. Yeah. So if our current user is part of wishlists for this particular property, we'll find the wishlist item and we'll return the ID of that. Let's remove this from log. Remove this. It will remove the wish list item. It will make an API call here, delete. Let's try this. So for that, I will exit this, clear this, again start our console. For now, I will log how many items do we have. We have one, two, three, and I think four. Yeah, four items are there. Okay, you can check this dot count, which is four. After we remove it, there should be three. So let's refresh. Where is the problem? Okay, nil class. For ID, it is given nil class, but that means that for some cases, this entire thing is null. So again, what can we use? Ampersand. Refresh. There are four properties which have been wishlisted. Let's try to remove one of these. I did click. Let me check, inspect, console. 500 is not valid JSON. Where did I make mistake? Wishlist API, wishlist, delete, exit, clear, refresh, console.log. Maybe some formatting issue. Let me do a couple of things. Uh, let's first comment, but yeah, this is failing. So let's comment this and this. Wait, it did got removed. Let's refresh, and you can see this in our wish list dot count, and the items are two. So we failed two times, and both the times it worked, but something was wrong in our code. Let's click again. This is the issue, but if we refresh, it is getting removed. So basically, it is working now. Let's refresh, and we are able to see it. Refresh, refresh. Now let's remove 500, remove 500, remove 500, and remove 500. And now all the wishlist items have been removed. So you can see all the items have been removed. So I think this should not be a big problem. Already we have crossed 23 minutes. So I'll stop my video here. You already know that it is working successfully. I'll just fix this error in next video. Meanwhile, if you want, you can fix this on your own also. Just try to inspect it a bit. Okay. Uh, our API call is successful, so there is no mistake in this. Maybe I will have to set some data, but the data should get logged, right? So yeah, no worries. You can check this on your own. For now, I'll just stop my video. And if you're finding this information helpful, please consider subscribing or commenting or adding a like on this video. And that's it for now. Bye bye. Thank you.